Hello, you're listening to UNS Talks, a podcast by the international architecture and design firm UNStudio. While Amsterdam is known for its canals, tulips, and bikers and beautiful buildings, it also happens to have one of the noisiest, most polluted, and even most dangerous streets at the heart of its very city. It has the Stadhouderskade, a street where office happens to be located on. Based on our knowledge of this environment and our own observations of being one of the tenants of this street, in 2020, we, along with our neighboring businesses such as the Rijksmuseum, the Heineken Company, the Nederlandse Bank, Amsterdam University of Applied Sciences, and Blending Bricks, came together to form the Green Mile. The Green Mile is a positive movement, and at the very heart of it is creating a livable Stadhouderskade for humans, plant life, and animal life alike. Its co-creators are residents, companies located in the street, and the municipality of Amsterdam, and actually anyone who would like to join in creating a better street, a better city for everyone, because it's together that we can create a real difference. Today, I'm joined by two members of the Green Mile, this initiative and a foundation, and we're glad to sit down with them to talk more about the project, the general directions and discussions around what these kind of projects bring to light. I'm joined by Ruth and Misja. Thank you for being here. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
Yes, of course. Thank you for having us. My name is Ruth van Dijken. I'm the co-founder and director of the Green Mile and also the co-founder of my own company, Blending Bricks.
And Misja?
Yeah, my name is Misja van Veen. I'm an associate director, architect and urban designer working at UNStudio for almost 20 years. And I led the project within UNStudio to get to the Green Mile.
Right, so we have someone really from one of the stakeholders of the other companies, as well as one of the design initiators of the whole project.
Correct.
Well, thank you for joining us. Maybe for our viewers who are not so familiar with the street, because we tend to work on the street, we walk through it a lot, and it's probably something that we look at, so we have our own opinions. How would you describe the street as it is right now in its state when you simply walk down it and don't pay much attention? Versus maybe we'll peel back some of the layers and look at the different perspectives we can see. But how would you describe it offhand as your first look at it?
Well, it's loud. There's a lot of concrete. It's very busy. It's around 20,000 cars a day at this street. A lot of bicycles, pedestrians, but mainly the cars are dominating the street. But on the other side, I see a lot of trees. The street's pretty wide. We have a canal next to it. There are birds living there. We have green roofs. So I actually see two things.
Yeah, and that fits the history of the street.
Definitely.
It was the outer boundary of the inner city, and originally it was a path to walk around the city. So the trees that are still here were planted to create this boulevard that people could enjoy. Yeah. And if you look, you can see that structure still, but it has been kind of destroyed almost by all the cars and the parking spots that are placed in between the trees. And you can see that it doesn't fit really to the original use, and it takes away the quality that is there. So it feels like a barrier, while it could be something to connect all of the different places.
Right. It has a very strong utilitarian sense to it.
Exactly.
There are 2 lanes for cars, there are lanes for pedestrians, for bikers alike. So it's become a major pedestrian and car artery in itself. Indeed, like that's the view that I have of the street. But I am curious about your perspectives as some of the initiators of the project as well. Ruth, perhaps you can share a little bit. What is it that you see as an advocate for nature, as someone who thinks about the involvement of nature in our everyday scenes, as someone who thinks about these things deeply? What is it that you see? Why this street has inherent value? And why do you think the Green Mile is necessary? What's there to bring to light?
Regarding what I see, so I see nature everywhere. So I cannot just walk on a street and only look at concrete or whatsoever. So I always notice even the smallest thing. So it could be just a fly, a bee or whatsoever, but I also notice the trees. So I also always see the nature trying to find a spot in this very busy street or wherever, the whole city. And I see a lot of possibilities because we have a lot of space, but we mainly used to use it for ourselves instead of giving the space to other creatures. So when I walk on a street, I see possibilities everywhere.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter where it is.
Yeah, we use it for not only, not even for people, but actually mainly for cars.
Yeah,
so it's,
exactly.
it's not a safe place to be around and not a pleasant place to be around. So it's only used to get from A to B, and not to be somewhere or
No.
to meet somebody. So it's not a good place for plants. That it's not a good place for animals, but it's also not a good place for people.
No, it's a good place for cars.
Yeah.
I mean, historically, you would think that a street is meant for cars, but are there other
That is
uses?
not true.
Yes, please shed some light. You, as an architect walking down the street, and someone who's used to analyzing patterns, as we designers tend to do, what is it that you see that could be, highlighted better or changed slightly to change the use?
The original use of streets was a public space for people to meet, and only streets existed long before cars came around.
Right.
And that the idea that we have now that streets are for cars is the result of an intense and deliberate lobby by car companies to claim that street for cars. So it puts the responsibility for safety on the pedestrians instead of the people driving the cars. And we see a big movement in society that this is changing, and that the focus is back on what are people actually, what's their rights, and what do they need. So we see that also in the city of Amsterdam. The city of Amsterdam recognizes that, and recently decreased the maximum speed in the whole city from 50 to 30. And that actually decreases the importance of this artery for the whole city, because it's slower to get around.
Right.
Which improves, which makes it much more attractive to use a bike or walk somewhere. So that's what I see when I look at, this sign of 50 changed into 30. That creates a lot of possibility to create more space for people and for plants and for animals.
Yeah. And people tend to use their bike more because they think like, well, on my electric bike, I'm faster than if I take the car, if you're allowed 30 kilometers an hour. Yeah. But I think everybody needs, especially our city is getting crowdier, much crowdier than before. And you feel the pressure. So you also feel the pressure in this street. If you go there, just imagine you're just surrounded by cars, noise, concrete, people always in a hurry. Exactly what you said, just driving from A to B as fast as possible. Well, actually what we need is also a way to slow down. We could walk. I mean, Amsterdam is a city where you can walk very easily, but it should be a little bit pleasant as well. And it makes us happier, It doesn't make us happy to be surrounded by cars or noise. It makes us much happier if we're surrounded by a bit more silence and nature. We can have a look around we can look around the water or just relax a bit more. But now it's like we're pushed out to leave the road, the street.
And we need to get from A to B, but you don't always have to use the car for that.
No.
Right. It's almost like this paradox when the city is becoming increasingly faster and faster. We want to slow down, and you can see that push from the municipality, but also from the people themselves. That's actually really interesting.
And it creates these opportunities for people to take back the space that is surrounding them.
Yeah. Claiming the space sometimes
Exactly.
even, although that's not our intention with the Green Mile. I mean, we're definitely a positive movement. We don't want to be, on the streets demonstrating. We just want to show and make it visible what's actually invisible. So there are a lot of invisible spots which you can make visible, which turn out to be a great place to meet each other, or a great place to turn into a nice garden or whatsoever. So
this connecting of people is really at the core of one of the pillars of the Green Mile.
Yeah.
And that's also how we started. When I think back of when we started, I didn't start. Ruth started the foundation in 2020.
The foundation in 2022, but the initiative actually started here at UNStudio, right? I came here for a meeting for Blending Bricks and UNStudio to talk about the vision we have and see if there were possibilities to work together. And then somebody from the team, I think Machtel, said, we have an idea for the Stadhouderskade, a Green Mile. And then it started buzzing like...
And then we had to gather all of the other, as much as possible, the other stakeholders along the Stadhouderskade. And we used design as a tool to create this collective movement. So we got some subsidy to do research by design, and how we use that budget is to create workshops together with as much stakeholders as possible from the city to envision together what the street could be like, to make it more attractive for people, plants, and animals. And we created very nice models, and it was really interactive, and that designing together created this idea of, okay, we can do this and we can make it into reality. And we instead of saying, okay, then this is how it's going to be, this is the design, we realized that no, every participants can make it their own, as long as the overall goal of making it more attractive is covered. We shouldn't make a design, we should design a process so people can make it more attractive together.
That's what made us very different as well. I mean, we started in 2020, it was COVID time. Everybody started looking at their surrounding, in the office, outside the office, how healthy is the public space, or how healthy is it indoors? And then it was like, well, actually, the Stadhouderskade is one of the most polluted streets, and all our employees are coming here. We walk around, we eat our sandwich outside. What can we do about that? Like taking a responsibility, so not just look inside or indoors, more outdoors.
Yeah.
And with 6 companies, organizations all surrounded at the Stadhouderskade is how we started. So the Rijksmuseum and UNStudio, Heineken and Company, Blending Bricks, the Nederlandse Bank and School of Applied Sciences. We all came together and had a shared ambition of how we wanted to see this street in the future. All had the same themes: social, inclusive, green, sustainable, safe. So that was easy to form an ambition, and we definitely did not want to make a master plan, because we thought if we start with a manifest or say like this is how it needs to be, nobody would embrace us. And it felt for us like, we need to write it down and put it in words, come together, have workshops together, write an ambition which everybody could embrace. And that worked out pretty well.
Yeah. We did create some images of some attractive images of how what is possible within the Stadhouderskade, showing how much more nature and how nature and people can actually coexist in a beneficial way, so they actually support each other instead of being an opposing force. But that's never meant like, okay, this needs to be executed.
Like a design,
It's to inspire and to motivate.
That was very interesting because we made 2 designs, right? One with the imker, on one of the bridges, so a beekeeper.
A beekeeper.
Yeah, on the bridge with plants and bees and insects around, which is of course not really possible, but could be possible. And the other one was with a lot of floating gardens in the canals. And I remember one of the stakeholders, not the ones we have, but a potential stakeholder was like, oh, but that's not possible. We have boats. So how are we going to do that? And then I needed to explain him that this is just a visual to inspire people. How can it look like? It doesn't need to be exactly like that. But what you said, it's the connection of nature and humans. It's actually the connection we lost. And we're trying to restore that a little just by making people aware of what is possible.
It's really interesting to hear that every one of the companies already had a inherent sense of this, it should be like this, or we should need more green, or, let's not obstruct the canal, as you just said, the body of water. Because if you think about the street, there is a canal running through it. There are quite these beautiful trees that Misja mentioned. There's quite a foundation for beauty. And it's interesting to hear that every one of the companies already had some vision, but there was no set master plan. So from what I'm hearing, actually cooperation and partnerships is one of the core values of the foundation itself. Can I ask, what were your first steps? What were the first inputs that you heard from these partners specifically? As you mentioned, these beekeepers, very interesting idea, that's above ground. Then you have these, I understand, pavilions on the water side. Yeah, that's utilizing the water. What were the other ideas, maybe seemingly crazy ideas? What were the ideas that people were highlighting that they would like to see?
Well, I think if I recall well, we did not really have like really clear ideas on how it needed to look like, but more in words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we still could, create.
There were more values and
Yeah.
wishes about, okay, it would be great if we would have a more green environment, places to meet each other. How can we put a lot of flowers here? And because we, or as architects, organized the workshop, we had models and we had all kinds of tools to help them make that into concrete examples. So being in nature, oh yeah, that's nice. How could you do that? Oh, maybe you can make a pavilion in the water. Oh, that's great. And so it's in this interaction between architects and people who are feel connected to a street that these concrete ideas come up. We couldn't come up with, okay, this is what you need, but they couldn't come up with, okay, this is what I want. But together we can come up with a concrete vision of how the world can be a better place, starting with the Stadhouderskade.
Right. At first, the need brought to light, and then the need addressed in a way.
In a specific concrete proposal.
Yeah, letting them work on a maquette.
Yeah.
So they could create some ownership and really think about, okay, how would that look like? But then still, I think it was, the bigger vision we had. And later on, we started to decide, like, okay, what is possible? What can we do from the smallest to the biggest projects? But from the beginning, we needed to build on that.
Right. So can I ask, we do have the point A that we discussed, the pollution or the street or the noise or the things that still need to change. We see how it is right now. What would you say is the point B that we're trying to make it to? What do you see as, I wouldn't say the end goal, because the design process always keeps going. And especially when you talk about partnerships, it's really a long-term process, right? It's a visionary process. But what would you like to see on the street? What would that look like?
Well, I would like to see more space for pedestrians, more space for nature. So if I imagine the streets in, let's say, 2030, I could see myself walking along the canal, having a place to sit, be surrounded by the plants, would see birds having a nest there, safely. I could maybe hear even the birds. I could cross the street safely, but I'll be also inspired by the research we do. So I'll be aware of the sound. I'll be aware of maybe the pollution, but I'll also be aware of the impact of less cars or more pedestrians and places to meet each other. Because right now you cannot meet each other. Well, let alone you can even hear each other. But in 2030, you'll be able to meet each other. If that's along the canal or maybe even on the bridges, which will be more greener than they are right now.
But like to make more of a destination than a passing. Yeah. I think we would all like to see that.
Just wander around.
Yeah, a chance to encounter something that you wouldn't typically on any other artery, right? Major traffic jam.
Yeah.
And it's more realistic than I imagined, actually. I was really surprised. I mean, the first concrete step that was the creation of the foundation, but that also turned out to be a real good step because it created a partner for the city. The city is the caretaker of the public space, so it's always an important partner to have.
Definitely.
They have their own process of creating vision and policies, etc. But because we are together as stakeholders, I think we had more influence and impact to create this, to make this vision more real with the city. And we even already saw some plans of what the city is looking for the Stadhouderskade, which is pedestrianized, more green.
Exactly.
It's a good sign.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think the same vision. And the interesting thing is just what Misja said, municipality is the caretaker, but I believe that we're all caretakers. So even if this initiative started by 6 organizations, which was maybe a little bit uncommon, mostly it's residents starting an initiative, for example, and not the smallest organizations joining our foundation. It was also, we needed to find our way or our place with the municipality as well, by saying, sharing the same vision and saying that we want to be caretakers as well, which was maybe not so normal, because people think like, oh, well, that's what the municipality does and that's what we do, where if you put it really black and white. And I think that's very interesting about this process with the Green Mile as well. The way you cooperate with other companies, the way you work together with the municipality and find that you're just colleagues, or maybe some other words for that, but really work together on the vision.
You're all part of a bigger whole, instead of just focusing on what happens inside of your organization or inside your building. It's about what happens around us, both spatially and organizationally.
Yeah.
Right. As architects, we deal with many stakeholders, with many parameters on an everyday basis. And we know that no project is built in vacuum, right? Architecture is really a team sport. So we're coming from that perspective. Partnerships are a key part of any successful project. But with a project like the Green Mile, it almost feels like partnerships are the project in a way. And you're working towards a shared vision, which thankfully also aligns with Amsterdam. Good sign. But I wonder, besides the vision, how does this partnership work practically? Do you have meetings? How do you even manage to have the conversation on the same level with so many different voices in the game? What does it look like practically? Not just from vision, which is beautiful and long-term, but day-to-day basis, here and the now. How does that happen?
Well, let's say before we were a foundation, we met irregularly because it was COVID time. Yeah. But we met sometimes when it was possible to meet each other in person, we did. And when not, we needed to do it online. But there was not really a structure yet until after 2 years, we decided it's time to reach out. It's time to show who we are and reach out to the municipality as well, which we didn't do for the first year and a half, I think. And when we had our kickoff in 2022, that was the moment to show this is the Green Mile and our vision. And then, of course, we needed to structure as well. So we decided to become a foundation and wanted to be a positive movement as well. And then we got a bit more structure. So we got a board, everybody. So the 6 companies, 5 of them were on the board and I became the director. And then we meet each other every 6 weeks. And during the week, I work on the Green Mile almost every day, I must say, because it's my passion to do so. Officially, of course not, but I have a big ambition to make the ambition real. So meetings every 6 weeks, but of course regularly I call with somebody from the board as well when necessary. But then there's a lot of meetings with all kinds of, residents, municipality, other organizations, new potential partners, new partners, but also just thinking of what can we do, think of new projects. So speak to a lot of people. And for the foundation wise, we do have a structure. But on the other hand, like weekly, it's just full-time job almost.
My experience, let's put it that way. So we want to contribute to the Green Mile also through our expertise as designers. There was an idea to celebrate the 750th birthday of Amsterdam, to make a present, and we are together with Meccano, the designers of the Dutch bank, designing a way to greenify the bridges across the Stadhouders, across the canal. But we have to present to you, and after that to the board. So that ensures that all stakeholders are always on board, and that is a pretty. It's interesting to see the different perspectives, but also seeing that they are aligned enough to move forward in quite a smooth way.
Yeah, and I think it also, especially this for the gift for Amsterdam 750, which will be celebrated the whole year, starting from October this year. Depending on the type of project we're planning to do, we have a look at who has the expertise to help us out with this. So everybody so all the companies have somebody they put forward to help. Depends if it's organizing an activity or if it's really an expert, like in this case, designing the present of Amsterdam 750.
Right. So there's many companies involved, very specific people, individuals such as yourself, putting in the extra time and effort to make the vision come true. Maybe, if I may ask, one of the major stakeholders is also the public, right? Because we're talking about a public street, which, as you mentioned, historically, the street is for everyone, right? So seeing public as the stakeholder, is there a way to also engage the public and make it an active interaction, not just between the companies or individual voices, but really with the people using the street on a daily basis? Is there such a bridge?
What I found really nice is the Mile Tulips action and the QR codes. I think that was a really good way to at least engage with the public and make them aware, like this is an initiative that takes care of, that has a goal of greenifying this streets, and if people are interested, they could find more interest, and it's really spot on messaging, like, okay, this is what we
Could you maybe explain a little bit, what are these tulips?
Yeah, of course, maybe you can explain better.
Well, when we reached out, so in 2022, when we became public, we got a lot of views on LinkedIn, and a lot of people found out about the Green Mile. So we were approached by a bulb supplier, let's say, who offered us the Green Mile tulip.
Oh, they reached out themselves.
Yeah, and I could
That's
not
the
believe
impact.
it, because I thought it was a joke, because I thought the Green Mile tulip, really, is that a tulip has this name? And they said, yeah. And they offered us...
Oh, so it's a name of the species.
Yeah, it's the name of
Wow.
the tulip, yeah. And we were, of course, very happy about that and very delighted that we were offered those. And we planted them as soon as possible in November, so we could have, like, I think it was 20,000 almost. So in March, April, they could pop up their heads and blossom, exactly. And what we did as well, what Misja said, so we were opening the Tulip Festival, which is every year in Amsterdam. So we were the opening location, and we used the staircases next to the Freddy Heineken bridge. So next to the Heineken Experience, we put like 100 boxes full of all the green tulips, Green Mile tulips. And we handed out little bags to the residents when we had a meeting. And so especially for the residents, we had meetings so now and then. And we shared tulip bulbs, which made people very happy.
Yeah, it's a very practical, maybe a little bit like a small thing, but also really symbolic in what the project ultimately aims to do, right?
Yeah.
And the fact that they reached out to the foundation itself, I mean, it shows of the impact a simple message can reach, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, this really speaks to the partnerships you were mentioning.
Yeah, true. Yeah, we were very happy about that. And with the residents, I mean, we're trying to find a way how to do it, because we're a different initiative. So we're not, as I said, not a resident initiative. We do have meetings with the residents so now and then, and we did ask them as well what their ideas are. So actually the same as we did with our own co-founders. And a lot of ideas are the same as what we want. So we see like what's possible and what's possible for us as a foundation to realize as well. So if it's a bit more smaller projects, to say so, then there's lots of other organizations who can take care of that. But if it's more like a bigger project, then we can take care of that and help the residents. But what I found out, to be honest, there are a lot of residents who are happy that some foundation is doing it. Because a lot of residents want to do something, but sometimes they are a bit tired trying to get what they want to do, or they're happy that a bigger organization is taking care of what they want as well.
Right. Because the first step is to be heard, and then there's the practical steps, right?
Yeah, I think that's the most important, to be heard.
Have you defined a specific role for residents or some kind of a framework where this can plug in? How do you make sure that these residents are heard?
So by organizing events for them. So we have 3 pillars in the Green Mile. We have nature and climate, education and awareness, and community and participation. So for the third, I mean, all the pillars are always mixed, but for the third, we have events, especially. And we don't have events every month, but we try to do 2 or 3 a year. Like this year, we do the cleanup again, which is the second time we do that. And we invite everybody. So residents, locals, expats, employees, it doesn't matter, everybody who wants to join, like the positive movement. And more than 80 people came last year. And it was it's such a simple thing. I mean, you're going to clean up the street because it's very dirty. Maybe not the nicest thing to do, but it's a very easy way to become aware of all the litter. it's a easy way to see what it does to nature. It's also a super easy way to get to know each other.
True,
And
yeah.
we always end up at one of our partners, so at Heineken Experience. So it's always a combination of doing the effort, making a positive impact, be active, and also have some fun. And people really liked to join last year. So I'm hoping this year we get even more. It's in September again.
I think I also received the invite in my inbox,
Well, good.
which was
I
a very
expect
good
you.
reminder. Yes, I'll show up with my gloves. But it is indeed, as you say, such a simple thing. It almost feels like I'm given an agency the moment I participate in that, because I become one of maybe the more secretive stakeholders, but also someone that's involved, and that connects me to the project, and that ultimately makes people care more, right? And that is the driving force behind any foundation or any visionary projects themselves. I wonder if there are any secondary results of this that you see, any qualities that come out of the project that aren't so obvious in the first place. For example, awareness, right? I would say it would be one of them, because when you're making the project, you're spreading the word, right? And that's awareness. Would you see any other qualities that are coming out of it and you can, in a way, quantify them and count them towards the good? Is there maybe research or publishing that you're doing, or campaigning?
Yeah, so I think what we're good at is making the invisible visible. And we do that by research. So we say this is the most dirtiest street in Amsterdam. Oh yeah, is it so? So we put sensors outside, one at UNStudio, one at our neighbors, to see air quality, how bad or good is it? Noise, we do research as well. And I think for all of those, mostly when you have the numbers, that doesn't say anything. You know, like if there's a lot of particulate matter in the air, okay, still then this number, I mean, I don't know what it means. Yeah. So what we're trying to do, so when we have these numbers, is to see how can we make this more visible? How can we turn this into something that people actually understand what it is? So then we work together with the students of the School of Applied Sciences, and I asked them, how can you make the invisible visible? So how can you make particulate matter? I don't know how, but that people see it at least, because if all our air quality, the bad quality, would have a color, we would definitely act more quick than we do right now. Yeah. And then, for example, one of the students groups, they made a box, a glass box actually, and it's pink and red smoke in there, which shows how bad or good the air quality is. And I think that's just what we need to do as the Green Mile. We're not going to say what is bad or good, but we do share regarding the research we do, so the data we get, and turn that into something else by the help of students, that people become aware of what they don't see or maybe they don't hear and then suddenly see. And that could be for air quality, but that could also be underwater life, seas, the plants, the fish or whatever, or some other projects. And I think that's what we need to do as a foundation, because we cannot say people or tell people that they need to change their behavior. We can just show what we see and then hope that people might change their behavior or get another perspective on things.
Right.
What I found really interesting is that all this data is available live on the website.
Yeah.
You really see, this is how the actual situation is now. That makes it also come alive instead of in a paper or these are the numbers. No, you can see it happening in real time, what the quality is of life on the street.
That's interesting. So you actually go from just publishing facts or figures, or we say numbers are quite abstract. They don't really mean much to our brain, but you're turning that into knowledge, and that knowledge, when you plug it into context, it actually calls to action in some way, right?
Yeah. And then in such a way that it really makes people think. You know, not just explaining them numbers, but for what I just said, like sharing it with the students and ask them, okay, build something, how we can attract the attention from people, and then they can have a look at it and think about it. And with the real-time data, we're going to extend that. So I see the Green Mile as a living lab. We want to try out things, pilots, see what works, what doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, we learn from that. We can share it with the municipality. And what does work, we can maybe roll out. We do pilots for greening passings, for example, to see, does it really make a difference with rain or heat stress? Same with the present we're going to give for Amsterdam 750. We're not going to say everything yet, but we will do research by heat stress, so measuring the heat stress right now and measuring the heat stress later again to see actually what we do in the public area. Does it make an effort on what we say, and does it make the Stadhouderskade more livable?
On the note of these metrics and actually checking for results, we're talking about a project that ultimately aims to greenify the street in some ways, right? That's one of the objectives with the tulips, or otherwise, or even this gift that you're giving to Amsterdam. I'm wondering, in terms of design, sometimes when we talk about greenifying, it can sound very expensive. It can sound very complicated, especially if you have many stakeholders involved. And sometimes it draws parallels to greenwashing. If you could speak a little bit into how can a project actually practically greenify in a meaningful way, or in a way that has substance to its residents, to the companies involved? What are the metrics of a good intervention? Is there some kind of way where you can measure the success of design or actions, or even publishing research? Is there a way we can validate the project and the efforts that we're taking?
Apart from just the hard data of what is the level of sound, what is the level of pollution, what is the number of accidents happening, which is you can measure that quite well. I think it would be really good to start introducing a new metric into the architectural language. We all know the FAR, floor area ratio. Maybe we should have a GAR, something like a green area ratio. So how much is actually of your area is actually green or permeable? That would be a metric I would be interested in introducing. And if you look at the changes that are happening now between Rijksmuseum and Heineken, the city is, together, based on our input, taking out parking spots and replacing them with a pedestrian path, more green. And if you would use this metric, it would be clearly an improvement.
Right. So even adding a little bit of green in the area could count towards something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and in this case, it's pretty big. It's taking away 42 parking spots.
Yeah.
So it's quite a big part they're taking away right now.
No, that's proven that you, just a patch of grass instead of a patch of a spot with concrete or bricks. It's better for the temperature. It's better for air quality. It's better for the hydraulic, the water drainage, lowering the amount of sewage we need, improving quality of life. So just going from brick, from something stony to something that is just, if only grass, is an improvement.
Even from a capacity perspective, you're actually delineating that nature takes priority over more vehicles or over more capacity in terms of cars, right? Which we have quite a few of. So it's an interesting statement to even make, that this space that has been given to cars before, we now make a shift and we give it back to nature, or to at least something that can be relaxing on the eyes, or something to actually sit down and observe, right? That's actually interesting.
Which also has, there's research proving that just looking at nature reduces heart rate, improves your condition mentally, both and physically.
Do you think it has to do with the associations of what you're seeing, or is it more physical properties in a sense, like color or
both? The human species has evolved in a natural environment, not in an urban environment. So we are hardwired to look at a certain distance, which we cannot do because there's buildings. We are hardwired to see green because that's the color of plants. So if we get that back, it actually relaxes our system.
And how do you think the evolution of cities that we touched on before, or even urban environments, how do you think this influenced us as a society?
Well, one perspective on that is that we are really restricted in our view of society and of space. Like, okay, this is where you go and that's not where you go. Well, actually, if you take away those imaginary boundaries, it all becomes much more fluent, and you think much more in opportunities instead of limitations. If you want to draw a connection between how we design our spaces and how those spaces influence us, like Churchill said.
Now, with that statement, a patch of grass makes so much more sense, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not such a specific object placed there with a single use, like a bench, for example. A bench has a use assigned to it, and therefore you will see it and you will sit down. But when you have a patch of grass, you could just go stare at it, you could sit in it, you could put your basket down there, you can have a picnic. It has infinite possibilities, and in a way, greenifying a street or even adding a little bit of more space for that nature opens up those possibilities because it's not so designed. That's actually an interesting tangent into designing something that's not designed. So moving away from over designing and giving back to just natural progression, just planting something, letting people do what they do, right? Do you see something similar from a nature perspective? How does nature respond to giving space to it? What might be something that happens?
Well, I think always see the resilience of nature. As soon as you make place for them, it starts. I mean, we placed the insect hotel in the Karel Willingplantsoen, and we also created 2 gardens over there with pesticide-free plants, which is very important as well. The moment we put that insect hotel, I was warned that people said, okay, don't expect too much. Maybe it takes 4 or 5 years before they come. And the insects came immediately. It's very interesting to see. That's why I like it. I always get enthusiastic about it because it's so easy to do. Even the smallest thing you create, it evolves. You just need to make a little space for them.
I think it's the other way around. I think everything is nature, and we just pretend we control some part of it.
Yeah, we have don't.
And we work so hard to take all of the plants out of the paved things. Every couple of weeks, somebody comes by to take them out.
Yeah, the weeding.
The weeding, nature is there.
Yeah.
Always, everywhere. And sometimes we pretend to, okay, this is for nature, but
no, it's that. I totally agree with you. I totally agree. And I think
we have to work with that.
Yeah, and live with it because we are nature, but that's the whole sense we lost, And as soon as you turn something into a green space like that promenade we get, people will realize that maybe in the beginning, if you would ask them, okay, we're taking 42 parking spots away by the municipality, not the Green Mile, but people might say, well, we don't want that, and where do I need to park my car? But then in the end, when it's finally there, people are happy because they could walk safely on the road, they can sit there, they can meet their friends. So sometimes it's just something you need to do, but I definitely agree with what you say. It's just, I think we're in this transition of before, everything needed to be very tidy as well. We wanted to control nature. It needs to be like this. Well, it's not possible. And now we're trying to let control loose a little bit.
Work with it.
Yeah.
Instead of seeing it as a opposing factor.
Right. And that's where I think that design method that you talked about, more directing and designing the process rather than what it ought to look like. That's where that plugs in.
Exactly.
And it makes sense because it feels like natural, right? When we discuss how we approach nature, how we approach places that are not designed, it makes so much more sense to do that way.
Yeah, it's the difference between being a carpenter or a gardener. You both work with natural materials, but it's a totally different way of thinking.
Right. You definitely need both, right?
No, you need both.
But you need to know when to be the gardener and
Yeah, but we tended to be only the carpenter.
Yeah, true. No, that's why you have so many partners involved to hear the many different perspectives. I really like what you were talking about, Ruth, that nature almost becomes an equal stakeholder in the process itself. Is there steps that we can take just as, people involved in the city making, just as we all are stakeholders and our vote counts towards something? Do you think there are steps that we can take towards giving nature more this voice in our choice of using the public space or not? What do you think we can do to give more space to nature as a stakeholder?
No, I think it's always good to think, if you're going to make a decision, what's the result for all of us? So if you decide to take away something or to put something back, what's the result for us human beings and what's the result for nature? So always think along all stakeholders. So for example, if you're going to put pavilions in the water, you do take away part of the water, and water is also a stakeholder. So what can you do, for example, underneath that pavilion to provide plants or food for fish or whatsoever? So that's always how I tend to think. If you put a building somewhere, you take away part of nature. So where can you add that back, or where can you actually regenerate it, put more back, so more positive? Make at least the roof green, or make at least your facades green. But I think it's a way of thinking, like not just thinking in the human, only thinking about the human perspective. If you do something, it affects everything. Even the smallest thing affects nature. So if you start thinking, having nature on board, even if we would have an empty chair here, every time you will have a look at the empty chair because you think that's where nature is seating. So what we do, just think about what is the effect.
Right.
And I think that's the creating the awareness, just thinking about your actions.
Just putting it back into the equation, right?
Yeah.
If you take out, you put back.
Yeah, and think about it. So I think that's the most important thing. And that all starts, in my perspective, by observing. The moment you start to observe and you see things, then you become aware. And then next time you think about, okay, if I do this, well, maybe effects like this. Am I going to do it? Yes or no?
Maybe standing on the street, could you share what is one of the last things that you observed like that gave you that awareness of, oh, I must do more in this, like from a personal stance, as a clearly an observer yourself?
So I see a bird having a hard time building a nest, for example. We have pavilions in the water and then they create a little fence around it so the bird cannot sit on the pavilion. And then I think like, okay, but this is weird, right? You put something in the water, the bird thinks he can make a nest there, and then he's not allowed to sit there, or she's not allowed to sit there. So then I start thinking about creating pavilions without those nets around it, for example. Or I start at least asking a question to the persons who put the pavilions in the water. Just by raising the question, things change as well.
Right.
But for me, I constantly see things. If I hear the birds, which maybe other people don't hear, I know they're migrating to somewhere to Africa, and I just wish people just look up a little bit more and hear them. So that's also something I want to integrate in the Green Mile, so that you become aware of the bird sounds and hear their story. Because we're actually all the same. We migrate as well.
We do.
Yeah, we look for
Vacations.
food. We check out if there are any restaurants to see if we're in a spot, how easily can we get away by car, public transport, or by foot, or whatsoever. That's what birds do. That's what all animals actually do.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
We're more alike than that we are different.
Yeah, we are. And if we realize that, if you realize like one of the birds are, migrating 6,000 kilometers to Africa and always return here at King's Day, then you might have a little bit more respect for them next time, or think like, all right, well,
True.
these nests we need to create here in these buildings, that's actually a good idea.
It's that thoughtfulness, exactly. Like that's the power of observation, when that plugs into what we want to change in our daily tasks, right? Whether it's designers or someone who works in the office, like that's the thought patterns your brain connects, and it suddenly becomes more meaningful. That process in itself is really interesting, and I think probably one of the effects that Green Mile is having on people, even hearing the words of Green Mile, right? When you're forced to think about, what does this imply? Am I connected to it in any way? It just becomes different. It takes a different meaning. Yeah. I think it's a beautiful process. And I hope we all continue going through this and noticing things and making those connections that you just described, and becoming more advocates for nature and for it to take more space in our streets, in our homes, in our everyday life, actually. Yeah, that would be the goal.
Yeah, we need to do it together.
You've described a lot of parts of the project, whether it's visionary or practical, or some of the inputs that your partners have been giving. I wonder if there are lessons that you have learned in this process that you can take into the next steps, or even that you could apply in your practice as professionals, or even into other projects for other cities, for other similar initiatives in themselves. What would be some of your biggest takeaways from working on this for nearly 4 years, actually? How would you, what would you take with you?
Well, definitely by not having a master plan. I would say, like the way we started, I think that was just the ambition. Reach out, see what people's visions are, or that's the biggest takeaway, because to have an open conversation about how you see the future, and just have it put it in words, and then later you can start designing. But if you design first, then I think you tend to build a little wall around you, and it opens up more if you start with a clear ambition, and nothing forced. That's what we said, a positive movement. You don't need to join. If you don't like it, you don't need to join. But if you do, then please help us out or contribute. But that is definitely because the Green Mile started in Hoofddorp as well, which is another city in the Netherlands, and also in Munich. UNStudio worked on that as well. So that's also what we want. And we don't just want a Green Mile in Amsterdam. We want people to copy this.
Yeah.
Right.
And then if I would say what worked out, well, this worked out. Also to get the municipality on board. If you tell somebody this is the way it needs to be, then you don't have an open, you don't open up, you cannot join, you cannot work together.
What I really learned is that as architects, as designers, we think the design is the goal. That's where the process is there to create something.
The product itself.
The product is the product. And I realized here that it can also be the tool instead of the goal. So we used the act of designing together as a way to create, to bring people together, to create a movement that is where the designing itself was an integral part of creating that movement. You couldn't have done that, create the Green Mile without this act as a tool and not as a goal. That was that's the lesson I learned.
What were some of the things that you kind of intentionally had to step away from, or like step outside of? Very curious, practically speaking.
No, our tendency is to say, then this is how it could be, and sketch it out, and then start fighting to make it a reality. And we had to. It's a lot of letting go. Okay, this is what it could be, but it doesn't have to be. Please make it your own. It's not ours.
So where's the moment when that becomes so worth it? Kind of fighting your intrinsic design process.
No, it's not about worth it. It's about what is your ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is to make it everybody's Green Mile and not just ours.
Right. So it starts actually from this step zero.
Yeah.
To know that you're just trying to achieve the process.
Exactly.
Yeah. It can be hard for designers. I can
but also liberating.
True. Yes. Yeah. When it can become anything in the process of creation and conversations, it can be.
You have to trust others that they also want the best. And I have been positively surprised every time.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's partnerships. That's collaborations in general. Yeah. So I think in our conversations we talked about awareness, the thought patterns that leads to, and the real change that it can have, even just from starting seemingly here in the mind. We've talked about collaboration, ecological value, what a street could be, what it should be, even the design process. We've really raced through it all. If you had a chance to deliver a message to our listeners, who each one of us, we inhabit our cities, our streets, what would be that message? What would you want everyone to be aware of, maybe as a part of learning in this process of the Green Mile, or maybe as a vision towards the future? What would be the one thing you would like to spread on as a result of this project?
Look around, see.
Exactly, observe. Start by observing. Just stand still for a moment, look around. If you stand still, or even if it's just 5 minutes on one spot, you're going to see so many things. And that's where it starts. As long as you don't observe, then you don't see it. But as soon as you see it, then you cannot close your eyes anymore, because then you know what's around.
You can't unsee it.
Yes. Well put.
No, yeah, totally agree.
The fact that you have the same conclusion already speaks volumes. Volumes of how impactful that can be to work on something together without having that defined goal, but just, working in the same direction as a whole. That's really powerful, and that's what we look for in all of our collaborations as designers, as advocates for nature, as business owners. So thank you for sharing all of your thoughts, all of your directions. I think we can all learn from this and together step towards the next step in our streets, cities, and whatever we work on. And thank you for tuning in. It's been really lovely sitting down with Ruth and Misja, and we hope that we can all just stop, observe a little bit, and see what there is to add to, maybe subtract to, or simply let nature invade in. Thank you for listening, and we hope you join the next time.